What up, you guys? So, in this podcast, I want to talk about suicide, but specifically Christian people that are suicidal. And I want to say that, the gospel is supposed to be a surrendered message. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of Christians that are still alive for themselves because people go to God for what they could get out of Him rather than to be changed by Him and to become everything that they were created to be. You know what I mean? Like, I was talking to somebody. And he was like, yeah, well, God gives people free will, you know, you could do what you want. And it's like, I don't know. I don't think God ever said that, because he told Adam and Eve specifically, don't eat from the tree of forbidden knowledge, and here's the consequences if you do. Shortly after that, they became self-conscious, they put on fig leaves, they hid from God. Adam never hid from God before. And then first conversation God has with him afterwards, God is asking him, what have you done? And Adam's like, it's the woman you gave me. It's her fault. If you would have never created the woman, I'd be okay. He looks at Eve. He's like, well, what have you done? It's the serpent's fault. He tricked me, So even back then, it was always somebody else's fault why you're not okay, And it seems so normal. Like, we do that all the time. We say, man, maybe I'd be okay if I had a loving mother, if my father loved me, if I didn't get my heart broken so many times. And then we justify being broken people, being broken by other broken people. And now we're a product of someone else's brokenness. You know what I mean? Instead of being a product of what we were created to be. So I want to talk about expectations, man, because I believe that's the root of disappointment. It's the root of complaining. It's the root of unhappiness. You know what I mean? Because, like, we expect, why humans suffer? Let me turn that off. Sorry. It's because we desire and we can't have. But even deeper than that, it's because we desire and we can't handle not getting what we want. We throw temper tantrums, when we can't get our way. Sometimes I wonder, man, what the hell is the difference between a 6-year-old and a 46-year-old? Because they seem to be the same in mindset. If a 6-year-old doesn't get what they want right now, they're going to throw the temper tantrum. But there's millions of 46-year-olds that act the same exact way. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus has a line in a scripture where he says, if any man come after me, he must first deny himself, And the reason he says that is because if you don't, everything else is going to get in the way of your relationship with God, Like, your wife is going to mean more to you. Your kids are going to mean more to you. Your job, maybe your finances. And that's why there's another scripture that says, unless you love less these things, your mother, your wife, your kids, and even your own life, you could by no means be my disciple, because one of those things is going to become Lord over your life, and then when you justify not being okay, you say, man, well, I got my heart broken or this happened. And it's like these people, they might as well be Lord over your life, because they dictate your emotions for you, We think if circumstance is not good, that means life is not good. And when life starts happening in a bad way, we feel like we emotionally, negatively have to respond. You know what I mean? There's people in this world where bad things are always happening to them, but yet they always have inner peace. Why? It's because they don't take the issue personally. You know what I mean? And so yeah, man, some of the things I'm saying, you're probably going to have to pray on it. Ask God to reveal these things to you. But trust me when I tell you, so many people are alive for themselves. And that's where every negative emotion that we don't want to feel comes from. You know what I mean? Social anxiety, not liking people, sticking to our group. You know what I mean? A lot of us only like 10 people, 15, maybe less than that, and everything outside of that, we just don't care. You know what I mean? There's so many people that they care about, their family, their close friends, and damn the world to hell, like, let the world figure out its own issues. And there's no happiness in that place. You know what I mean? And some of us are so offended. There's no happiness in that place. When someone says something to you, you think their motivation behind saying it is to correct you, to adjust you. And maybe it's true, like there's some people that speak to you and their only goal is to try to change you. And the only reason they're doing that is because if you change, their life would be happier. It's not even because they give a damn about you. It's because if you changed, it would please them. Human relationships are so needs driven. Sometimes even in a marriage between husband and wife, they're like, sweetie, it's been 6 days since we had sex. Like, you know what I mean? And this is, like people think marriage is just orgasms and that's it, and desperately needing each other to fulfill each other's need. So if you practice this one habit, if you wake up in the morning and you say, God, no man owes me anything. Like, it would be nice if people loved me, but they don't owe me that. They don't have to love me. It would be nice if people answered my phone calls, but they don't have to. It'd be nice if people answered my text messages, but they don't have to. You know what I mean? And then learning how to adapt. We spend so much time complaining. No wonder we don't know how to adapt. Adapt to what's happening. Your complaining is going to cripple you from ever being able to adapt, because all you're going to do is focus on the problem and get mad at the problem and feel like the problem shouldn't be happening in the first place. And not realizing that, life doesn't bend to you. You have to bend to life. Life doesn't adapt to you. Life doesn't care that you don't like the way things are set up, or you don't like certain people, or you don't like, life doesn't care about none of that. Like, all these things come to you, not to destroy you. All these issues, they've come to build you up. They've come to help shape you and mold you into what you were created to be. And one of the craziest things in the world is when the clay yells at the potter. You know what I mean? God is the potter, you're the clay, and he's molding you into what he wants to create you to be, and God is love, which means you were created to be love, not to fall apart when your kids don't love you, not to fall apart when your friends don't love you, not to fall apart. You know what I mean? When you meet people that don't give a damn about you, that's your cue to be concerned about them and pray for them. Like, why are you shedding tears for the sake of yourself? So sad because you're not getting your needs met by another human. You see how needs driven we are? Like, everything is I need people to text me back. I need people to consider me. I need people to be there for me. And it's no wonder why you're emotionally a mess all the time, because you constantly need, and your relationships become a vacuum. You personally, you become a vacuum to everything you come around, and you suck the life out of people just by being around them, because you need them so badly for them to say the right things and do the right things in order for you to be okay, which means you being okay is dependent on them, which means they control your life, which means you'll never have control. You know what I mean? Which means your anger is always going to be someone else's fault. Your anger is always going to be because someone did something, someone behaved a certain way. You know what I mean? It's like, when are we going to take accountability over how we react to life? You think that you wish you had control. The type of control you wish you had is control over the circumstance. You wish that circumstances wouldn't be so harsh. Don't wish for an easier life. Wish that you had the strength to endure a hard one. Wish for more skills. Wish for more grace. Wish for more, you know what I mean? Being able to deal with life the way that Jesus did when he was here. Because that's the only freedom that you'll have, is responding to life the way that he did. Because if Jesus himself took on the attitude that most of us take on, he'd never make it to the cross, Instead, he would have been like, man, I bless people and they only come back to me to get a blessing. I do this for people and all they want is to get back from me. I mean, these people, they don't even thank me. They're not even appreciative. They have zero gratitude. Why should I keep blessing these people? I'm not going to die for these people. They're ungrateful. They're hateful. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus didn't do any of that. If Jesus came here pointing fingers, he would have never laid down his life for the sake of another. And greater love has no man than this, then he would lay down his life for the sake of another. In Corinthians, when you read it, it talks about love. And the first thing it says love is patient. So if you have zero patience for a lot of people, it's for one reason. You don't love a lot of people, First it says love is patient, and then it says love is kind. And it's written that way on purpose, because your kindness for people is going to flow out of your patience for people. And if you never get the patience part down, then your kindness can never flow. And if you don't have kindness towards people, then you're going to take a list of offenses. Like, there's the next couple verses, it says, love doesn't seek its own, which means it doesn't wake up in the morning for itself, demanding and making orders from other people so that it could be okay. Love doesn't do that. It also doesn't take an account of a suffered wrong, which means if you violated me 100 times, I don't have 100 journal entries of all the times that you did me wrong and quoting them to you every time you do me wrong again. That's not love. You know what I mean? Like, if God did that to you, you would have no hope. There's a lot of things that we do to people that, God forbid, if God did back to us, there'd be no hope at all for all of humanity. I want to talk about the reason God is so forgiving. It's because he knows what you were created for. You and everybody that you can't stand in this planet. He knows exactly what they were created for, you know? And if people that bother you so much were half of what they could be, they probably wouldn't bother you. They probably wouldn't be someone that you even complain about anymore, because they'd be embracing their destiny, their potential, their calling in life, you know? There's so many people living way beneath their potential, you know? So your grace for people, your patience for people is going to flow out of you understanding that they're not living up to their creative potential because they have no idea what that is. And because of free will, we could kind of just pick and choose what we want to be, you know? And free will makes it so that you could walk a million miles away from God and never want anything to do with whatever he called you to be. But, you know, so if you put metal in a microwave, right, you'll destroy the microwave, you know, read the manufacturer's handbook on a microwave, you know. But if you live for yourself, you'll destroy your own life. Like, read the manufacturer's handbook on your own life. You'll destroy your own life and you'll make it everybody else's fault why you're not okay. You're going to say stuff like, maybe if I wasn't bullied in school, maybe if I wasn't raped, maybe if I wasn't school shooters, you know, perfect example. School shooters shoot up schools because they feel like, maybe if I wasn't bullied, or maybe if circumstances wasn't so unbearable, I wouldn't shoot up this school, you know? That's their rationale. And they're taking a list of offenses. They're holding on to a list of offenses. And love doesn't take an account of a suffered wrong. So if these school shooters learned how to not take an account of a suffered wrong, they would never be school shooters. You see what I mean? Like, first, if they learn patience, they would have kindness. If they had kindness, you know, love doesn't seek its own, which means they wouldn't be alive for themselves. If they wasn't alive for themselves, then they wouldn't be holding on to everything that was done wrong to them. And if that weren't the case, they would never go back to school to retaliate for everything wrong that was done to them. You see what I mean? So there's a level of peace that we were created to have. And there's a lot of emotions that we embrace, that we normalize. Be careful what you cling on to when it comes to emotions that you don't want to feel. You might be managing your anxiety saying, man, life is always going to be like this, you know? Be careful with that, you know, because the more you cling on to things that you don't want to feel, the more you continue to feel things that you don't want to feel. And we're quick to defend whatever we cling on to because we think that this is our personality type, or God made us sensitive, or God made us weak. No, he didn't create you sensitive or weak. We became that by studying other people, other fallen people. And now you're a product of your parents' insecurity, a product of your friends, a product of everything else around you. Everybody else around you decides who you are. And everybody else is pottering you, except for the great potter. You know what I mean? And one of the most saddest place in life is when the clay yells at the potter and gets mad at the potter. You know what I mean? And it won't yield to the potter, you know? And the thing about clay is, if it won't yield, you got to put it on the shelf, you know? Let it dry out a little bit and add a little bit more water, you know? But in the meantime, it's not being used. So, you know, you'd be amazed what God does with your life. If you fully submit to him, you will have peace. You will have joy. You know, Jesus is the Prince of Peace. Nobody really talks about that. They talk about Jesus as if he came down to earth to correct human behavior and to adjust everybody. You know, he had to come because people sinned. Like, you know, I'm sure we all understand that. But it's deeper than just because of sin. It's because once he gets the sin consciousness off of people, they could get on with destiny, purpose, value, and become everything that they were created to be. He died so that we could live. You know, he got beaten so we could live unbeatable. He was punished so that we don't have to be. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, man, it's a good feeling for me to believe that nobody owes me anything, you know? And I really believe that. Like, I believe it so much. I have a rich friend, has $100,000 in his bank account. And I believe, give me a second. So my fancy rich friend, right? I believe, even though he has $100,000 in his bank account, if I ever needed money from him, let's say if I ever needed $1,000, right? I would never, like, let's say if I asked for $1,000 for him, he tells me no, I would not get mad. Most anger comes from self-seeking, self-serving purposes. Like, we're mad because we can't get our way. We're mad because we demand and people say no. and we feel so entitled. Lose your sense of entitlement. Nobody owes you anything, you know? So I feel like I've never asked my friend for money, but if I asked him for $1,000 and he told me no, I would not try to manipulate him into believing that he's obligated to give me anything, because I don't believe he wakes up in the morning to meet my expectations. There is no expectation. You know what I mean? Like if I ever asked, I feel like he has the right to tell me no. It's his money. He does with it whatever he wants. But there's so many people in this scenario that they'd be like, well, you know, you have 100,000. You mean to tell me you can't give me 1,000? You act like you're going to miss it so much. I mean, come on, dude. You have so much money. Like, I thought we were friends. I thought we were cool. And the moment you start talking to people like that, you know, you may not even realize how manipulative you're being. Manipulating people, guilt tripping them into feeling like they owe you something. You know what I mean? And if you really believe that your blessings come from God, you would never get mad at that human being, because your blessing comes from God anyway. You'll just knock on another door, you know, and you know that God will woo the heart of the person that, you know, you'll get your money from somewhere. Like if it's an emergency, things will just happen, man. You know, like if you believe that God breathed into dirt and then from the dirt stood up a man, then why can't you believe that just because a bill came and you can't afford it, that he can't come through, you know, that crisis is bigger than the Lord. And these are the things that we allow to become Lord over the Lord himself, is our problems, our pride, our expectations, you know what I mean? We hold such a criteria on other people's life, mandating that they live up to our expectations as if they wake up in the morning to please us. Other people are not here to be everything you want them to be. You know what I mean? You know, but they are here to fulfill their destiny. They're here to be everything that God created them to be. But he's not going to force that upon them. Of course they have free will. They could go the other direction. You know what I mean? Because you wouldn't really have free will if there's two doors you could potentially walk through, and yet God is standing in the way of one of them. You know, one thing that fascinates me is in the book of Genesis, when they did the wrong thing, God wasn't even there. Like, he wasn't staring out the windows. He wasn't checking up on them. He told them straight up, look, you eat from the tree of forbidden knowledge. On a day you do that, you'll surely die. But they didn't drop dead, which means something died. So what was it? The image of God. Their love died. They was cut off from love and in desperate need of it ever since. You know what I mean? So what that means is from that moment, it led to them lying, being self-conscious, self-focused, insecure, everything negative, everything wrong with the human race. It happened in that moment, you know? They were no longer alive for what God wanted them to be. You know what I mean? They were alive for themselves. And it becomes clear when you see them lie to God. You know, when you lie, you're trying to preserve yourself. You know, you're ashamed of the truth. That's why they hid in fig leaves. They don't want God to see them. They were ashamed of themselves. There was no shame before that. There was no lying to God before that. There was no, oh God, like I heard you coming, so we decided to hide. Like, why would they ever hide from God? It's because they did the wrong thing. You know what I mean? And, you know, what's interesting about this is, you know, instead of them waking up in the morning constantly with fig leaves, God, you know, he skinned the animal and he clothed them so that when they wake up in the morning, because look, they would have been sin conscious if they went to bed with fig leaves constantly, because the clothing that they put on to hide their shame would have constantly reminded them that they messed up. The reason God slayed an animal and clothed them was because he wanted them to understand that even though you messed up, I still love you. Even though you did the wrong thing, I'm still here. Like, I still have tender mercy and grace and kindness, you know? Like, he didn't straight up say to hell with you. Like, you should have known better. Like, you know, he didn't cut him off at that moment. Like, of course they messed up, so there's consequences of messing up. But he knew that if he would have let them be self-conscious, waking up in their own fig leaves that they dressed themselves in, they would have forever continued to stumble. So he wanted their mind to get off the sin consciousness. You know, I was watching a video and God asked this guy, he said, do you know why people die from secondhand smoke? And then the guy was like, Lord, that's a silly question. Like, why would you ask me that? And God said, people die from secondhand smoke, not because of the secondhand smoke, but people die from secondhand smoke because they believe they can die from it. So it's their own belief system killing them. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. You know? There's something very crippling about fear, about anxiety. Like, it's a physical thing, man. Like, when fear grips you, like, your mind can't tell the difference between something you vividly imagine and something you're actually experiencing. That's why when you vividly imagine something fearful, you might as well be experiencing it, because to the mind, you'll know no difference. You know what I mean? Like, It's crazy when I think about 6 months from now, somebody's going to go skydiving and they're going to have anxiety every day of their life for the next 6 months. And it's like, if you're going to panic, why not save that panic for the day that you're actually on a plane and when they open those doors and you're like, 20 seconds away from jumping out? Like, like, not that I believe in panic, but if you're going to panic anyways, why not wait until you're just about to leap out the plane? But instead, people ruin their own life 6 months at a time by panicking about a future date where something's going to happen because they're like, man, like, I wonder what it's going to be like, When it comes to fear, people are obsessed with the worst case scenario. I was talking to somebody about Uber and it was like, well, I would like to do it, but I don't know if I like random strangers sitting behind me. And so a thought came to my head. I'm like, what are you scared that someone's going to slit your throat from behind you while you're driving? And someone actually said, yeah, that's actually what I'm afraid of. So fear is nothing besides being obsessed with the worst case scenario, So if you want to kick fear out of your life, learn to be obsessed with the best case scenario. Learn to believe in the best, to believe in what could potentially happen for the good. Because even though bad things could happen, I'm not saying be naive, be so optimistic that you don't see that bad things could happen. But what I'm saying is don't let the bad things that could happen weigh on you. Put a huge burden and weight on your shoulders for you to carry. You know what I mean? It's much better to deal with, like, if something's going to happen in 6 months, it's much better for you to deal with it when it happens than for you to panic from now until 6 months later, And the more you rationalize your fear and try to manage it, the more you ensure that you continue to carry it. Because there's things that we manage that we're supposed to put off. God says, put off anger, put off malice, put off these evil thoughts. Because if you don't put it off, your life the life that you live is only going to reveal the belief system that you have. We all have a belief system. And the life that we live is nothing besides a reflection of that. Why you think the people that never believe in themselves never get anywhere? Because once you tell yourself you're incapable of doing something, guess what? You are incapable now because you said that. And once you believe that, you'll never put in the effort necessary to get to where you could be if you let grace flow through your life, I'll give you a quick story about that. I know a person, two people in particular. I was on a journey for 2 years. Learning how to not be offended is an amazing skill, and yeah, I feel like it could be taught, but the more we submit to God, the more we want to be like Jesus, we'll really learn in that place, because Jesus was not offended. God's not offended, by people, because if he was, some of you can't handle people talking about you behind your back. If you hear a rumor that someone said something nasty about you, the first thing you want to do is confront them and ask them, what the hell is your problem? Like, you want to fight? Like, if you got something to say it to my face. And it's crazy, man. That's what 5th graders say. 4th graders, man. We be like 39, 67, still with the same mentality of, if you got something to say it to my face and we could fight if you want to. What the hell is that, And you know what? It's crazy because I was watching another video the other day. The guy said that it's no coincidence that high levels of violence is directly linked to low vocabulary. There's people that are very bad at communicating, that they're quick to want to fight because they have zero communication skills. There's something about articulated speech that's powerful. And that's why in the Bible it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. There's something powerful about words. And if you don't know how to articulate yourself, it's going to lead to frustration. You know what I mean? And man, there's so many things, so many topics I could cover. But anyways, let me go back to what I was saying. And thank God that he reminded me, because usually I go way off topic. And so God's definitely with me on this podcast. I was on a journey to learn how to not be offended. And in that journey, I was still getting offended a lot. And they kept telling me, just deal with it. You're always going to be offended. People are always going to rub you wrong. People are always going to. But there's this guy that I really believe what he was saying, and I gave my heart to what he was saying. His name is Dan Moeller. And he seems to be the most unoffended person I've ever seen in my life. And I just kept saying, God, I want what he has. I'm ready to put off everything, every mentality that I have that prevents me from living the way he does. I'm ready to throw that out the window, because nothing kills a man quicker than the philosophy that he has. That's why Jesus said, if any man come to me, let him first deny himself. And that means deny the philosophy that you grew up with. That's why the purpose of baptism is for you to get submerged underwater. And that's supposed to represent your death. You're supposed to come out of the water a new creation. You're supposed to die. And you know why Christians are suicidal? They want to die because they haven't died. It's ironic. They want to die physically because they haven't died, like metaphysically, spiritually, mentally. They're still alive for their own standards to be met by other humans. And no wonder life is a grind, because from that place, life is nothing but a constant grind, So I've been on a journey for like at least 2 years, learning how to not be offended, learning how to not take things personal. And these people I were talking to, it was two of them, husband and wife, constantly offended. Everything bothered them, you know? Anyways, they told me I was wasting my time, and I refuse to believe that. I aim high. I always aim high with everything. You know, they say shoot for the moon so that if you fail, so what? You land on a star. You land on a star. And, you know, if you don't land on a star, you'll land somewhere in the atmosphere. If not there, you'll land on a cloud. But at least you'll land a lot higher than you would if you set the bar so damn low that anybody could jump over it. You know, like, that's a problem a lot. We set bars so low. No wonder we never make anything of ourselves, because we don't believe in a higher potential, you know. One of my favorite scriptures is Genesis 11:6. He says, nothing they propose to do will be impossible for them, which means whatever they propose to do is possible because you propose to do it. That's so powerful, you know. Like there's things about law of attraction, and, you know, a lot of the stuff that I really believe is biblical, you know, the secret type stuff. You are what you think about, you know. There's a lot of biblical principles to it. I mean, they talk about these concepts without really giving credit to God, but, you know, I know where the source material comes from. That's why I'm not offended when I watch these things. But there's a lot of Christians that can't watch that stuff because it's like they'll get offended that they're not quoting the Bible or talking about God, that they're giving too much credit to the universe and not enough credit to the creator of the universe, you know. So yeah, man, it's a very crazy thing when you only look to be offended. You'll never be able to pull anything valuable out of conversation, because you're only looking at the things that were offensive that were said, and you're pulling that out of conversation instead of pulling the things that could potentially change your life forever if only you've trained your ears to listen for the right things. So anyways, back to my 2-year journey of learning how to not be offended. You know, I feel like I'm so much close. I'm not all the way there, but I'm getting pretty much submitted fully to God. You know, I have people tell me to kill myself. You know, man, go hang yourself. All types of crazy stuff that people say to me. I'm not even mad that they say it, because for them to try to put me down, they're already beneath me. They really need me to be strong enough to lift them up. They don't need me to be offended. Any man could get offended. It's so easy, you know. But here's the thing: any man could lay down his life and live for the sake of another and follow Jesus. Like any man can, you know. And if only they want to, you know. So grace, that's God's part, but faith is our part, you know, and we're saved by grace through faith. So we have something to do with the equation, but the only part of the equation is faith. But we got the easy part, you know. Thank God that when we plant a tree, we just plant a seed. That's it. God grows it from the ground. You know, God sends the rain, can you imagine if God planted the seed and you had to figure out how to bring a tree from the ground? You'd be up all night trying to figure that out, how to get a tree out the ground, how to make the sun come up in the morning, how to bring the rain out to water it. So thank God we got the easy part. We're just sowers, you know. Sometimes other humans come to water it, but God provides the increase. So on my 2-year journey, getting back to the story, because I really want to wrap up on this, my phone's dying. I'm so much further than where I was when I started my journey on learning how to not be offended. And there's no offense in love. There's no offense in me laying down my life for the sake of another. In that place, I can't be offended, you know? And guess what? I'm so much further than the people that tell me that this was impossible. The people that told me that, still equally offended. And I wish them well, you know? I hope to God that they learn how to lay down their life, because they were Christians too, but I'm starting to understand principles that they didn't understand. And it's not because I'm better than them, you know? It's just, you know, when I would try to talk about these things, they spent so much time justifying the fall of man, then no wonder why they're a bunch of fallen men, you know, a bunch of fallen women, because we justify the fall and we'll never get up justifying the things that make us fall. It just enables that to be a continual cycle, and it just enables it so that tomorrow is always yesterday and the cycle continues forever until you die. It's a very sad place to live from, you know, not believing that anything is possible except for how life has been the last 15 years. So thank God that I believed in a higher potential, because now I'm much further along than these people. They're constantly offended. And me, it's like I'm nearly untouchable, man. And it's by God's grace. And I'm just so thankful for that. And in that place of submitting to God, that's how you resist the devil. That's how you resist everything, man. Things can't torment you anymore. I mean, even when you're going through a storm, mentally, you're not going through anything, because you're just rejoicing in all things. This metaphysical place is real, man. Like, people were actually there, you know, in the Bible. And you might wonder, how can people get locked up and chained and they're getting whooped and spanked and beaten, but yet they're singing praises unto the Lord? It's because they deny themselves and they picked up their cross, you know? They're not alive for their circumstances to be ideal. They're alive to be all that they could be through Jesus. And living from that place is amazing. So I just thank God that I believed in a higher potential, because that's the only way that I've gotten to a higher potential is the belief system, man. Because belief enables action, and action brings upon change, and change revolutionizes your life. You know what I mean? So please believe in a higher potential with everything you do, man. You want to learn how to not be offended. You want to learn how to... There's nothing about being offended. We justify being offended so much that we stay there so long. And what's so good about other men raising your blood pressure? Oh, that, why justify that? Do we realize the fruits that it produce, like being a certain way, what it does to us? We can't sleep at night because another man said something he shouldn't have said, and now we're bickering, and now we're gossiping, and now we're upset, and just everything is me, man. The ego, man. The ego needs to be crucified. The pride, it needs to go. And the quicker that goes, the quicker you can move on with a good life. You know what I mean? And you'll be able to sow seeds of positivity, sow seeds of love, sow seeds of encouragement, because life won't have the capacity to bring you down anymore, because you're not alive for your circumstances to be ideal. And when you're not alive for that, you're going to be a great seed sower for the kingdom of God, So, and I want to be a motivational speaker. I need to get to the point where people can't bring me down, because if people could bring me down on the day that people need me to give a speech, I might not feel like doing that. And it might be 4,000 people present that desperately needed me to say what I was going to say. But because I'm taking life personal instead of my relationship with God personal, I'll never be able to get to that speech seminar and and say whatever's on my heart that people might need to hear. So my goal is to be unbreakable, because that's what I saw in Jesus, and that's who I'm following. I'm not following the fallen man, I'm following the man that is unbreakable. And if I have his mindset, and if I think the way he did, then I'll be just as unbreakable as he was when I share the same mentality that he had when he was here. And that's the reason he overcame the world. It's not because he was a special man, because we make Jesus to be a special man, but we forget what makes him special is the fact that he's love and we're not, So what makes Jesus special is he's love. Some people think, oh, Jesus is unbreakable because he's the Lord. No, he's unbreakable because he's love, and love doesn't seek its own. Love is patient. Love is kind. It takes no account of a suffered wrong. That's how come he didn't get offended every 3 seconds. That's how come he, and from that place, he's able to perform miracles. Everything he does flows out of who he is. And because it's who he is, it becomes what he does, Like some people do rhetorical Christian things and they think, oh, I'll go to church because that's what Christians do. You know what I mean? And it's like, nah, man, it says never forsake the gathering of this assembly. But we forget why we gather in the first place. We go to church so that we could stir each other up in love and in good works. Love first, because your good works for people is going to flow out of your love for them, and love is patient. So the next pillar of love comes kindness. Like I said earlier, your kindness for people is going to flow out of your patience for them, So man, yeah, I could harp on forever, but I really feel like this message is done. In closing, I want to say, to prevent suicidal thoughts, submit to God, become all that you were created to be. And in that place, you're not alive for yourself, and you won't even think about wanting to end your own life. When you die to yourself, that's the only way that you could live. And if you're a Christian and if you're suicidal, it's because, if you're a Christian and you're suicidal, it's because you're alive for yourself, One of the best quotes I ever heard in my life is by a man named Dan Mohler. He said, the best day of my life was when I died, and I've been alive ever since. And, yeah, man, he died to his standard, his criteria, his expectations on man. He died to all of that. And now he's fully alive in the Lord. And he lives from such a beautiful place that I believe is available to all of humanity, if only we want to, Depends on us. Because God's grace, that's Jesus dying on the cross. That's him taking the first step forward. But then our faith, because we're saved by grace through faith, that's us taking our step forward, And there's a scripture that says, no man loves God unless he sees his first love, People don't love God first. He loves us, and then we love him, So the reason I say that is because some of us are telling others that they need to love God more. But they need to receive God's love, so that through them receiving it, they could have just have a revolution within their mind and realize that they're supposed to distribute that same type of forgiveness, that same type of tenderness, that same type of mercy to others. And in that place, they're supposed to become what God is to them for other people. And then he flows through them towards other people. You know what I mean? So, and that's the gospel. A lot of people don't preach it that way. And I wish I knew that that's what the gospel was when I was younger, because I didn't understand. I thought people was just trying to recruit me into heaven, you know? I thought God was like a sergeant or something, you know, sending recruiters to recruit people into heaven, you know? So yeah, man, if you're a Christian to go to heaven, life is hell. But if you're a Christian for heaven to come back into you, which means for you to have Christ-like mentality now on earth, from that place, you'll have so much impact. And there's so many people praying for Jesus to come back today, and it's only because they're frustrated with life, and they're being so overran by life that they feel like the alternative is going safely to heaven. But they didn't leave a legacy behind. They just have hurt feelings, and they're not able to produce anything because they're too busy being offended by man to lay hands on the sick, to, you know what I mean, to perform the miracles that Jesus did, to, you know, to go talk to people and minister to everybody and love people. You know, they're living for themselves, you know, and that's why they want Jesus to come back tonight, not realizing what would that mean for other people. There's so many people that are not ready, but to them, to the selfish person, this Christian, they're like, well, whatever, I'm ready. So God could come back now for all I care, you know, to heaven with me and to hell with everybody else. You know, so many people that think like that. Like when I pray, I'm like, Jesus, take your time coming back. I'm in no rush for you to come back today, because I know what that means for the lives of many that are not ready. So, man, you know, love is patient. So if these people learned how to be patient, you know, there's a joke in the church. People say, don't pray for patience. Like God will give it to you. He'll send you a bunch of annoying people. But it's like when you're praying for patience, you're praying to become love, because love is patient. You know, if you become love, you'll be patient. You'll be kind. You know what I mean? So pray to be everything that God created you to be, you know, the true God of the universe, you know, and regardless of whatever your religion is. Yeah. And on religion, yeah, do a lot of investigating, man. Like, you know, I can't tell you what to believe, but I can tell you that the right religion, it'll produce the right fruits. Like you'll just know, you know. There's a quote from the Bible that says, "Seek and you should find." You know, some of us haphazardly, like, you know, half-heartedly. I mean, we half-heartedly seek things, and we wonder why we never find anything. So, seek diligently, and you shall find. You know, with all your mind, with all your heart, with all your compassion. Just really look, you know. And I believe you'll come to the same conclusion. God doesn't want you to miss him. You know, so many people, they get discouraged by the fact that there's 8,000 religions, 10,000 religions. And that makes them not want to search at all, because they're like, what's the point? I'm going to miss God anyways. Nah, like with that mentality, of course you're going to miss him. But whatever you seek diligently, you shall find. You know, everybody would come to the same conclusion of believing in the correct God if they would seek it diligently. You know, I know some people that think that's crazy, but yeah, man, like I said, God doesn't want you to miss him, you know? So if you're seeking, trust me, man, he'll show you that he's real somehow. So yeah, man, read the word, read the Bible, read the Quran, read everything, man. And always pray, always pray. And whatever religion you're in, always pray, like, is this the right religion? Am I believing something false? Does it benefit me to be this way? Is what these scriptures teaching me? Does it lead me to inner peace? Does it benefit mankind? One of the greatest philosophies I ever heard in my life, and I'm going to end on this note. I was supposed to end 5 minutes ago, but it was by Jordan Peterson. He said, live your life in a way that directly benefits you first, right? But also in a way that benefits your household, your mom, your dad, kids, whatever. Also in a way that benefits your city, your community, your nation, your region, and also in a way that benefits the whole entire planet, you know, which means, because I know a lot of us, we demonize money. A lot of people don't want to be millionaires because they think it would make them selfish people. But when you live in a way that benefits you first, but also in a way that benefits the whole entire planet, how could you be a selfish person, a selfish millionaire, you know? Like if you know, Bill Gates right now, he's a billionaire. He's trying to take out the top 5 diseases in the world. Some people are like, man, I don't know what I would do with $1 billion, $1 million. And it's like, why not try to eliminate diseases completely with your money? Why not that, you know? the reason people can't comprehend what they would do with $2 million is because they're thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about their community. They're not thinking about, or maybe they're thinking about, they have like 15, 25 family members they really care about. And they're thinking about those people only. But then they're like, what else am I supposed to do with $1 million? And it's like, how about the people starving to death, How about like buy people sandwiches that need to eat, man? Like, damn. Like, we think about ourselves so much that we don't want to become millionaires because what would I do with all that money, One of the most amazing things I ever heard in my life was this guy, rich man, very rich man, saying that poor people are selfish, which at first I thought was a very strange concept because, usually us poor people spend all of our time saying that the rich people are selfish. But what I know about rich people, even if they are being selfish, at any moment, if they want to be giving, they can be. Poor people don't want to give because we give out of scarcity. We have a scarcity mindset, so we believe giving $100 to someone in need takes away from us, takes away from food out of our daughter's mouth, our son's mouth. So in that place of fear, we never feel like giving, So he was in an interview. He said poor people are selfish. And I'm like, man, I wonder why he says that. And so the interviewer says, what makes you say that? He says, poor people, they always say, if you ask a poor man, does he want to be a millionaire? He'll tell you no. And his reasons as to why is, I only need this much for my car. I only need this much for my electricity. I only need this much for my phone bill, for my daughter, for her wedding, for her college, for my wife. He said poor people only care about maintaining their 30 by 30 foot square apartment unit, and that's it. And I thought, wow, and he was like, do you know how good it feels when Puerto Rico gets hit with a natural disaster and I could just send $150 million, not of my own money. I actually raised money and then sent that money. And I was like, yeah, man, you're right. Like I'd be able to help so many more people if I was rich. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to be rich. It's always on your motives. Do you want to fill an empty swimming pool with money and swim through it? Is that why you want to be rich, or do you want to help people, and it's the more you give. Here's one last thing. It's a concept that I've recently understood. They say it's better to give than to receive. And they always say this around Christmas. And I always thought that was weird. I was like, man, like, why would I want to give? I'd rather receive. I don't want to give you anything. It's because giving starts the process of receiving, Sowing starts the process of reaping, So yeah, when you sow a lot of seeds, you're going to reap a harvest. And, karma works both ways. Some of us, we sow seeds of destruction and we wonder why we're reaping a harvest of destruction. So that's why I never put any energy into the universe that I don't want to receive back. Everything is positivity with me. Everything is uplifting, encouraging words with me. Everything is love. Everything is peace. Everything is Jesus. Everything is, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to reap a harvest of a bunch of things that I don't want, And here's the thing, right, about following Jesus is things are going to happen to me regardless. There's going to be a lot of unjustified things happening to me because that's what comes with the package of following him. But in that place, I can't lose heart because I know why I'm following him is for the sake of others, and laying down my life and just trying to be like him as much as possible so that people can see an example of the ideal way to live without being so emotionally distraught and being a vacuum cleaner, like sucking the life out of every one of our relationships, so needs driven. Like, I love you has turned into I need you, like you're the oxygen I breathe. You're my world. It's no wonder why people want to kill themselves after a bad breakup, because if somebody's your world and they break up with you, as soon as they leave, you don't have a world anymore. Like the world left because she left, because he left, because they were your world, idolatry, man. We don't realize how much that is idolatry, how much we're idolizing people and men, So, and that's why God says, unless you love less these things, your wife, your girlfriend, your job, your finances, you could by no means be my disciple unless you love less these things, So, yeah, man, I hope that, I said something that was worth your time listening to. And yeah, man, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next podcast. Take care.